Episode of Talk Visual. We are here to give you our insight, our experience. Demetrius Knowles, Julio Guzman. Let's get right into it. Demetrius, what is going on with today's youth and the workforce? I think they're missing something. The generation that's coming in, they don't understand that sometimes they've got opportunities, great opportunities right in front of them, but they mess it up because of their attitude, and they don't give it the importance that it needs. So you've told me a little bit about, the people that come to your shop, looking for a job.
Right.
And you spend a lot of time and you spend a lot of money, looking for the right talent. But the talent that sometimes appears in front of you,
on paper, it may not be what it's in person, what in person looks like or respond like. So in my world, as when we do our interviews from the applicants, we're on Indeed like most persons are, and you run through a couple hundred applicants every month. And when we find a good candidate, we usually pull about 10, 15 different personnel, and they come in. We schedule them on different days, and when they show up, we ask them a series of questions, and going through those series of questions, we try to find out from them, what is it that they're, looking for in a company, and when some of the answers they give is not simply what's on their resumes, because I traditionally don't even look at the resume.
But are these kids, are they coming out of high school? Are they in college?
We get a collective group. Some of them are coming out of high school. Some of them are in college, or some of them are not senior, but middle age personnel. Yeah. So it's really, at this point, it doesn't matter. It just seemed like there was a shift.
Okay.
To when a person comes through the door. We've had a couple of applicants come through the door as if they're going to the gym. Let that sink in for a minute, right?
So they're going to apply for a job.
Yes.
But they are in gym gear.
They're in gym gear. They're in gym attire. I've seen a few comes in, and appearance matter. First impression. Some of the things, we look for in a personnel is, first thing out of the gate, we try to look at the appearance of the individual. Are they well groomed? To some degree, etiquette.
Right.
A firm handshake. Look a person in the eye.
That's important.
The old-fashioned way of things. It seems like all the surviving things goes back to the old-fashioned way of business.
It's almost like you want the person to come in with the level of respect, saying, I'm really honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to potentially getting a job at this company.
Yes.
But if you walk in gym clothes, you haven't had a haircut, you haven't shaved, that's not a very good first impression.
No, not a very good first impression.
So you're immediately starting off on the wrong foot.
Out of the gate. Traditionally, what I do after pulling the applicants and we vet them a little bit to see, we immediately, we go to social media.
Oh, you do? You check to see what?
Because you're representing a brand. And if you're out on social media doing things that's not brand compliant, considered, that you may or may not know, as one of the things I tell my son, if you're going to be out there, be very careful what you are posting on social media, because you're killing your opportunities in doing that. And I like to start off by saying that. Then we go into it. One of the other things I like to tell a person, if you know that you have 15 interviews today, take a moment and research the company a little bit. What are the pros and cons of that company? Because
you, as the employer, want to see that this person has taken some time to know a little bit about your company.
Yes.
It shows interest.
100%. And a lot of time they come in and I ask them, listen, what led you to this? Oh, because of the pay.
That's it.
Bottom line. Instead of saying, you know what, I've always been into technology. I like it. I want to do it. And I'm not afraid of trying out new things. So, my technology is pretty much as in everything we do today.
Right. Everything.
Everything we do. And being uncomfortable is what I look for in a person. I want you to be uncomfortable. In fact, I tell my team, stay uncomfortable for the success you want.
That's right.
Don't get comfortable in
the only time you're growing is when you're uncomfortable. Because if you're always in your comfort zone, You're never learning any new skills.
Nope.
You're never being surrounded or being taught by somebody that may have done it better,
Right.
that you can absorb that information from that person and maybe apply it to your life. So being uncomfortable is always a good indication that
Right.
you're growing.
Right. And so as to our questions, we ask them a series of questions, even though their resumes are there.
Right.
I typically, when I see a person, we look at their resume and see how long they've had a job.
Okay.
Because if I see a person and they come with a resume that they've been jumping, we call them jumpers.
Every year they got another job, or
They
every 6
assume,
months.
yes, sir. They assume the grass is green on the other side, and they don't know it's the sewer leak.
Yeah.
So as simple as that. So
in my business too, realtors tend to do that. They think the grass is greener on the other side.
I tell them all the time, listen, I no problem. I stand in front of no one, in between you and whatever that success look like for you. But under the same token, standing 10 toes down and putting in the work. There's certain basic formulas that always stand out. Hard work.
Right.
Staying willing to learn. As long as you're willing to learn something new, you will always be one step ahead of the other person. What is your purpose? What is your why? You know?
So with the amount of stores that you've got, you've hired a lot of people,
Yes.
right? Has there ever been one that stands out, the personality of that one person that you really, took kindly to and said, man, this person's really going to do something, and they proved to you that they've become, let's say, like one of your right-hand men?
Correct.
Or women.
Both, and I've had in both cases where I've hired a good 60% of my employees I've never really had a job before.
Okay.
So it's almost like a grooming tank.
Got it.
And usually they can either make it a career for them along the technology line, or if they decide that they want to take the college route, while in college, they're simply having something to supplement those college charges. So yes, I've started off with several different individuals that came in and didn't know anything about the line of work.
But when you interviewed them, so if we're going to help,
yes,
young talent come into the workforce, when you interviewed those now what we call superstars in your company,
right?
How did they come in and how did they approach the interview?
It was the energy at the beginning of the conversation for me. It was, and the questions, and answers they were providing. Okay. Simple. It started off, in my opinion, the way you came in.
All right.
The first impression.
Okay.
They say first impression sometimes is your last impression.
That's right.
I started with that, and I didn't even look at their resume at this point. I wanted to hear from them directly, because sometimes you can AI generate a resume.
Everyone is doing that now.
Real,
right?
If you're real, you're real.
Right.
And you could pretend, but eventually that usually seeps through and says, "I see right through you. Right. I know what your intentions are." And they tend to let their hair down. In the first week, we usually give them, the first 90 days traditionally to prove themselves beyond the resume. And in doing that, we get to see them in their natural environment. Can say once we got past the interview stage, and then we send them to our university for learning. But most importantly, I'll give you a quick story. I've had one or two persons came to the interview in a bodysuit. Let that sink in.
A bodysuit.
A bodysuit. We were so in shock, or practically in a costume.
He was probably saying, "Hey, is this going to take long? Because I got to get to the gym."
I'm like, took it not serious at all.
Wow.
So needless to say, we gave them the opportunity to shoot their shot.
Right.
Then we've had other instances where the two persons come in looking, one was prepared with a resume in hand and ready to go. The other one wasn't. Sometimes the unemployment agencies, to keep a person on unemployment, they simply send persons to go look for jobs, and they have to go from job to job to job. And they say, yes, I attempted to look for a job, but in all honesty, sometimes they're not looking for a job. They just needed to prove that they got an interview so that they can take it back to the unemployment company for them to keep them on unemployment. Right. So we have to weigh that balance now to see whether or not that's feasible for this generation. I know during the COVID era, unemployment was paying very well.
Right.
So it kind of hindered the job market from actually looking for a job, because I could stay home and make more money staying home doing nothing, which is always, a waste of talent to be sitting there doing, or wasting your talent away. So back to it. Coming in, first impression, running through the process, and saying, hey, why should you work for us? Give us your best elevator pitch.
Right.
Why should I hire you?
Right.
Usually that's the hook for them. And then they have to explain, well, I'm going to school and I need money.
Not the right answer.
Traditionally, no. But then you get to hear their story and you get to know more about them. So we usually ask them a series of about 5 to 10 questions. And most of the time we like to know who are they?
Right.
Tell me a little about yourself.
What are your
Who is
aspirations?
Julio Guzman?
Right.
Looking for a job. Why should we hire you?
Got it.
Usually the last hook would be that question, and they need to explain that to us. And if they usually give us a good reason why, usually they're more likely going to get an opportunity for them to prove themselves. Because then you could still let them go, or they can simply move on or become customers as always to shop.
So if you were gonna give some of the audience some gems and some ideas on how to approach getting a job in your industry, first one was make sure you look the part.
Yes, groom yourself.
Groom yourself.
Then I would come in with a little bit of knowledge to the company you're applying to. In the interview, be prepared to answer those questions. Keep it short, brief, and direct.
Right.
Nervousness, we get. We know persons will mess up, and because some of them are nervous, and some of them their first jobs, and we welcome that.
And it's okay to be nervous.
And of course, I expect you to be
human.
uncomfortable. Yes, because in any environment you walk into, you can sense the individual that are cocky.
Right.
Some of them are humble.
Right.
In our space, they say closed mouth don't get fed.
Right. Right.
So answering those questions, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
You're going to get people, they're going to say, well, I'm a workaholic.
I'm a workaholic. Right. What? Come on, define that to me. What is that? I mean, listen, I'm willing to compromise. Hey, if there's overtime options, can I work this person's shift? I'm always available.
And you don't have to know everything,
no.
But as long as you come across as I'm willing to learn,
yes.
And I will follow all the instructions that you give me.
Correct.
And I will come back and apply those instructions every day. And I want to make the experience for the customer
yes.
better than it's ever been for me.
Right.
Because sometimes I feel like customer service is lacking.
It always leads back to that word. I mean, I built the business on customer service. I believe from the first time you walk through the door and you says, good morning, welcome.
Yeah.
Not how can I help you? I don't like starting off with how can I help you? I like to say welcome and ask them a little about themselves. Hey, how are you doing today? How's the family? That usually throw them off because they're already coming in the store thinking that you want to sell them something, even though they're walking through the door to buy something for themselves.
One of the things that I dislike when I walk in to some of the cell phone stores is you walk in and I know that they're busy because it's a busy day. It could be a Saturday. There's a lot of people there. But you walk in, I would at least like someone to acknowledge me.
Yes.
Just say, hey, how are you? Thanks for coming.
We'll be right with you.
We'll be with you shortly. Yeah. Or I'm doing XYZ, and as soon as I'm done, I'll be right with you. And then I'm like, okay, at least they know I'm here.
Correct.
But the people that are just running around, I know you see me.
Right. And they totally ignore you. And again, that's never a good trait because a lot of things can happen in that space of time. If a person, they want to say, catch you slipping, they can do things in that moment to simply cause some problems, i.e. theft, or just simply walk out because lack of acknowledgement. I mean, I believe if your person walks through the door, you have a certain period of time to introduce yourself to them. Good morning, thank you for coming in. We'll be right with you. And you don't want to say it in a rush, too. And the person in front of you respectfully says, while I'm working with you and this information is transferring, is it okay with you if I were to help relieve this, some of the stress on the store right now? And you traditionally, the person will respect the fact that you're willing to help alleviate some of the stress that's because of the backup. But most importantly, first impression, how you greet the person, remembering the person's name, the handshake of that moment, and ask them if is it okay for me to call you Julio. I might want to say Mr. Guzman, not just call you by your Julio. And then you ask for important information. There's times when you simply don't want to give your important information out because you don't know who that next person is. That's you telling me your passcode to your account out loud. You don't know that person who's sitting next to them may have someone online or anywhere else. So you simply want to be, your inside voice.
No, and customers can be rude too because you know, the tech can be with a customer and they're
Yes.
going through something. Somebody walks in
Yes.
and the good customer service technician says, "Hey, I acknowledge you. I'll be right
Right.
with you." And then that other
Other
customer
person.
says, "Oh, wait, I just got a quick question."
Yes, and they just
And
kind of take over
that
the
that
situation.
tech needs to say, "I understand
Right.
that you have a quick question. However, please allow me to finish with this customer and I'll be right with you."
Right.
Very respectful. Don't just let these other rude
Rude.
customers
Right.
jump in and say, "I don't care what you're doing with that person.
Right.
I need to solve my problem right
That's
now."
right. And it's a matter of etiquette, right? I mean, it's controlling the room. You know? Simply controlling the room is essential today. Nothing is worse when you walk into a place of business and you simply see a group of employees standing there. And from one, they don't acknowledge you. And when they do, the way that they acknowledge you is like so deflating that you simply say, you know what? I'll do it somewhere else. I can't stand sending persons online because it keeps the brick and mortar in business. I say, let me help you with that. Let me go forward and make sure that you are getting the best possible treatment that I can provide you as a concierge. So I believe in the fact that, hey, you come through the door. Our goal is to make sure that we service you from the A to Z. Even if things that we don't do, I will try to make sure that I point you. I'll walk you through the right direction. Why? Because what's the purpose of coming to you?
Right. So we've acknowledged a few things: some interviewing skills, customer service, and to touch a little bit more on customer service. Do you feel that the customer service, let's say throughout the city of Homestead,
Right.
do you think it's at the appropriate level?
No, I think um, it's very bad right now, and I think social media has a lot to do with it. Social media can be used for good and bad. I think that it's really approaching in the bad side because for most entities that's out there locally here in our beautiful homestead, I think that we need to go back to the basics, and the first formula is etiquette.
Right.
First thing is how to greet people and how to make them feel warm and fuzzy. Why should I do business with you when there's so many others like you out there in the same space? You know, do I remember you to come back to you? Would
Right.
you treat me like I'm family versus you're just a number?
Right.
I believe in if you treat them like family and you make sure that you're looking out for what's in their best interest, you keep them for a lifetime.
Right. So in your business, there is a list of things that are typically needed from a customer.
Right.
But then when you've got that technician that just goes a little bit
Oh,
further,
further.
a little bit beyond,
Hmm.
you know, because maybe the person's elderly and
Yes.
they're not so good with technology.
Yep.
Here, let me help you. Step one, step two, step three.
Yep.
It's not, hey,
Hey,
just follow these
this is
steps and
instruction. Go home and do it
right.
yourself. I mean, that cookie cutter conversation start. There's a saying we had many years ago. It's called lanyap. I call it
Lanyap,
lanyap, little extra.
little extra, little extra.
He
That's
who
what keeps
provide a
them
little extra.
coming back.
Yes, sir. You know what I mean? You go into a little extra, it's going to separate because at the end of the day, all of them do this. All of us do the same thing, especially in the tech space, right? Just a matter of who's going to provide me with that lasting impression. What did he do different than the other person? And why should I drive all the way down south to visit you, or why should I come across town to see you versus the other guy? And I know that when you say something to me, you're looking out for my best interest, not just trying to sell me something. At the end of the day, yes, it's in a sales environment. However, the person knows that I trust you that you're going to provide me with the best possible service, and it's not so much the sale; it's the service after the sale.
Well, Demetrius, let me tell you, with not only all of the services that you provide me, and not only at my house but at my business, but everybody that I've referred you to. You know, there are all these big conglomerate companies that
Right,
provide the service you provide.
right.
But when you are the one giving them that personal service, everybody has called me back and says, "Hey, man, thank you
Right.
so much
Because they
for
know.
referring me to Demetrius because now any little thing that happens, I call Demetrius,
Right.
he answers his phone, and he immediately addresses my problem instantly."
And traditionally, it doesn't matter where I'm at primarily, unless it's in a moment where I can't get to my device or be able to forward that call somewhere to one of my employees. I think that it's important to make sure the customer feels that you're not the machine, because everyone wants to send you to. I can't stand today the 1-800 numbers you have to call. Then you have that elevator music. 95% of the person drops the call and says, you know what, I'll deal with it later, and it usually never gets done. I believe you should be able to pick up a phone and set an appointment where you can come into a local one of our stores and simply say, hey, can you help me with this? I am having this type of issue. And let us go to bat for you to make sure. So I believe in And you know what? Let me look into that for you.
Right.
Let me see what I can do to help you. Go ahead about your day. Let me see if I can
Right.
run that down for you and get you the answers. You may not always like the answer, but however, it is an answer.
Right.
And it's going to be one that we feel that we can come up with a healthy solution for. And I've told persons, I've answered my phone in the Mediterranean and they don't know any difference because all they care about is, how can I help you? You know?
Sometimes I call the 1-800 number. You got to go through 10 minutes of the automated system.
Yeah.
And then you finally get somebody on the phone and you're like, say, excuse me, can you say that again?
Right.
I'm sorry. Listen, I said XYZ.
Right.
And then, the language barrier, sometimes
Right.
it's tough to deal with. So it's always a pleasure when you get to speak to you. And
Right.
you're like, don't worry about it. Continue your day.
That's
I'll
that
handle it.
hometown feel. It's like good food. You want to keep coming back to the location that provides you with that good food, that feel good. So I figured that if we can continue to do that, it is very difficult to nurture this generation back into those things we learned as when we were youngsters. That the way you dress,
Right.
your etiquette, you know what I mean, the things you think, say, or do.
Correct.
Because if I feel that I can't trust you, I can't really do business with you. And I think that we've built a relationship for over 20 something years and 30 years and over plus in the business, that customer service is the catalyst that leads us.
That's right.
And I don't like sending persons to the machine. I said, stop doing that.
Right.
Think local, keep it local if you can. Go online if only as a last resort, but let us guide you to make sure you get things done the right way. So I believe in the customer service space heavily because our business is strongly built on it.
Right. That's a good point. And also, going back to getting out of your comfort zone, you've told me a few times, hey, why do you still have that phone? Because it's been working for me forever.
Right.
I've got all my contacts, I've got all my emails, I got everything set up.
Right.
And thinking about having to merge that stuff onto a new phone makes me kind of cringe a little bit.
Right.
But unless you had told me that, I'd have stayed on the, iPhone 10 or whatever that was.
One.
So once I upgraded after your recommendation, oh my God, so many new little applications are on there, and little perks to make your life easier.
Right.
And merging the stuff over is as simple as just waiting a few minutes.
It's
right?
Traditionally now seamless. I remember back in the day, we had to handwrite the information, and it should be stored on your SIM card.
Yeah.
And you only allowed 250 numbers on a SIM card, and it wasn't allow you to put your address, a picture, a ringtone. Most of those things were unheard of. Having a SIM card today is almost now going away because it's now digital. So I believe in the time when you can plug your phone to one machine and transfer the contents. Now it's all over the airwaves.
Right.
So, but we have a system where getting a new phone today, why should you get one? I mean, obviously, persons buy a phone for a few reasons. They want memory because they want to take a lot of pictures because cameras are really good today. And
really good.
You know what I mean? Back in the day, you used to buy the phone you used to have the phone and a camera. Now the phone.
Nowadays, I see people with these huge cameras. I'm like, man, you don't really need that anymore.
Not
Your
at all.
phone has almost the same technology as those huge
and better
Canon cameras.
That is correct. Not only video recording as such, all in one. So it almost becomes obsolete to have those other items.
Right.
But when it comes to selecting a phone, you want to select the phone that has good battery life, right? Something that has a fast processor, meaning it reacts when you touch it,
right?
And something that feels good in your hand.
Correct.
And traditionally, people buy a phone that the family have because that it can help them when they run into, hey, how do you get this?
Right.
We always provide classes to our customers. So anytime a customer is running into a scenario where that we or they can't figure out, they come into the location and we welcome you to do so. But a lot of times you just buy the phone and you figure it out. I'll give it to my kid or I'll give it to my brother or sister.
Right.
And they don't want to do it. They'd rather say go back to the store and let you figure it out.
So for the person that has been stuck with an old phone thinking that, one, it may be way too expensive.
Right.
And two, I might have to go through a new learning curve to adapt to a new phone. How do you address those two main concerns?
For one, like the main brand, I mean, we know who they are. Simply, we tell them, what do you use your phone for? And why is it that you feel that keeping that old model? Because what happened every year, software updates. Software update takes like 5 to 10 gigabytes of your phone memory every year because it needs to keep up. Correct. So a lot of times they want to keep things the same. And there are some brands that even though a new phone is upon, you change to a new model, the generic makeup is still the same how it operates.
Correct.
So it's rarely ever changing. So when I tell a person, hey, get the phone with the next up plan, what does that mean? You can change your phone every year. Every 12 months or less, you can change your phone whenever you feel that I need a new phone. And what's the purpose of having a new phone? The
But
camera,
isn't that gonna cost me another
no, but that's part of
$5,000?
that feature. Even though the phone is worth, anywhere 500, 600, 1,000, 1,500, based on how nice the phone is and the technology that's in it. But with the next up feature that allows you to change your phone every year, like almost like a lease, but you can also pay it off at any given time. You're not committed to that device. One good thing about the program, the bottom line, you can pay off the phone instantly, or you can finance without any APR or any financing charge. If it costs $1, they're saying you don't have to give us that dollar today. Give us that dollar in 36 months, in 36 payment.
Ah.
It's the same dollar without any APR charges and any finance charges.
So it's not expensive to upgrade your phone every year.
Not at all. Not at all, because then also you keep the latest and greatest. You're the cool cat on the block.
So for that person that's on a fixed income, and they don't have any disposable income,
Right.
it's almost like they're keeping the same payment of the phone,
Correct.
but they've just upgraded.
And in most cases now, you trade that phone in, you get trade credits towards the new phone. So if that phone that you deem to be trash, traditionally in the past you would just toss it, or pass it down. But now that phone has trade credits. You don't throw those away anymore. You can say, you know what, that phone can get me $1,000 in credits towards my phone that's worth $1,000. I end up coming out where I pay nothing, because what the provider does is give you a credit each month until it's paid to zero. As long as
Okay.
you stick around, you don't get the credit in bunks. They want you to stick around, so simply you have to be within a 36 or 24-month payment, or you can simply pay it off. You're not obligated to do anything.
All right. All right. So we've touched on a lot of topics today. One last one I wanted to touch on is sometimes people ask me about fiber and they don't understand fiber.
Yeah.
What is fiber? Why is it different than broadband or the traditional things that we typically have in our offices and our homes?
That's a great question. And right now, fiber is glass, and it's asymmetrical, meaning you can the same speed up as it is down. Well, the other providers, they have a version of it where they go up fast and down slow. So when you're
Right.
uploading something, it's like you can go have coffee and come back.
Right.
With AT&T, I mean the provider, simply the same speed up as the same speed down, glass, and it's only you on that line. It's kind of like the highway.
It's your dedicated line
Dedicated line from you to the
to the
dedicated.
endpoint. Okay.
As opposed to the other provider at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you realize why it slows down. Well, you're sharing your coax with someone else
see.
in the community, which happens to slow it down. But with fiber, same speed up, same speed down.
Is there a quick way to understand if your location is ready for fiber?
We do a quick check. All I do is run an address check, and that tells me whether or not that person. And we have promotions where it ties in one to the other. So you get another 20% for converging your wireless with your wired, meaning your landline with your cell phone. And I think that's a great component that keeps the customer's bill down. Obviously, it makes it stickier. They stick around because, therefore,
Right.
hey, and you have somebody you can depend on. I figured pick an agent or a person that you can rely on to whenever there's a scenario. They may not be technicians, but they can help get that technician out there and follow through to make sure that they actually do what they say they were going to do.
Now, are the prices competitive? Are they?
Extremely. In fact, we will pay off your agreement with the other provider and also to come to us with no agreement. We'll pay off your agreement
Okay.
that with the other provider up to a certain dollar amount to come over to our side where there is no commitment. And we'll give you some rewards too along the way based on the promotion that's being held.
How do people get in touch with you?
Hey, call me, 305-283-7011. My number is out there. And again, I try to keep it local, but I'm not limited to the four walls. I prefer to get out in the community.
Demmetrius, thank you for your time. Again, let's continue to provide this audience with all the gems of our experience, and let's make this community even better. Thank you again.
Amen.